right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm here with Dotty Woodson, and we're going to get started with the DIY sprinkler repair brought to you by Tarrant Regional Water District and Arlington Water Utilities. And so before we get started, I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about the webinar and everything. So if you have any questions throughout the entire thing, you can enter them into the box, and Dottie will get to them at the end of the presentation. In the control panel there's an area where it says handouts, and there's a handout there for you to download. It goes over some of the basic information that Dottie's going to go over with you today, and it's just kind of covers everything on a basic level. And then, like I said, our speaker is Dr. Dotty Woodson. She's an irrigation expert. And my name is Heather Bass, and I'm a conservation coordinator at Tarrant Regional Water District. All right, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Arlington before we get started. Like I said, this presentation is sponsored by Arlington, and if you're an Arlington resident, you can go online to arlingtontx.gov/knowyourh2o, and if you have one of the remote read meters, you can go on there and look at your water statistics at a finer level than you can on your water bill. So you can look at hourly. You can also set up alerts to if you get high usage or a certain amount of usage per hour or something like that, so that you get an alert if you have a leak potentially, or any type of water usage that you aren't aware is happening. And you can also view your water bills back to like 2 years. So log on there and you can get all kinds of more information about your water bill than you could ever get before. Also, for Arlington residents, you can get a free sprinkler test kit along with this class. So if you check your email afterwards, you will get some information about how you can go to the downtown library this coming week and get a free sprinkler test kit. And it's going to have some of the equipment that Dottie is talking about, how you can test your sprinkler, and then some other goodies like soil moisture meter, rain gauge, things like that. As I said, the presentation is also sponsored by Tarrant Regional Water District, and so I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. TRWD are the people who maintain all of the infrastructure, the pipelines, and the reservoirs that are needed to provide raw surface water to our cities in Tarrant County, and then those cities process that raw surface water to drinking water standards and provide it to our homes and businesses. And so Arlington is one of those cities that TRWD provides water to, as well as Fort Worth, Mansfield, and all of the smaller cities within Tarrant County. And the reason why Tarrant Regional Water District cares about this type of presentation is because water conservation is an important water supply strategy so that we can continue to provide water to everyone in the future with a growing population. And so our water conservation website is savetarrantwater.com, and you can go there to find all of our resources and everything about how to save water. And so, for instance, there's free weekly watering advice that's custom to your location that lets you know how much you should water your lawn. You can also sign up for a free sprinkler check where a licensed irrigator will actually come to your house, walk through your sprinkler system, and let you know what type of issues you might have, and also let you know how much water your sprinkler system is using. And then also there's a calendar of events and classes just like these in the future. And then also lots of videos of previous classes and water saving tips, resources, things like that. And we also partner with other organizations to provide this type of educational content. And some of that is Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service and the Tarrant County Master Gardeners. Okay, so after all of that, I'm going to go ahead and start turning it over to our speaker. Like I said, our speaker today is Dr. Dotty Woodson, and she is an irrigation expert. And I'm going to go ahead and let her start sharing her screen so that she can start the presentation.
Okay, I'm trying to share my screen. Okay, that wasn't the way to do it.
So far, so good. I see your screen, but I don't see your presentation yet.
Okay, I'll figure it out. I sure thought I pushed the right button, but I obviously didn't. So.
Well, I see your PowerPoint down at the bottom. Maybe you just need to bring it up.
Oh, is that it? Yeah, maybe that's it then. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
There we go. Okay. Yep. There it
Thank you,
is.
Heather. Nice to
All
have a coach on board, right? Okay, so we're talking about sprinkler systems and what you can do yourself. One of the reasons why we started this class is because we had a lot of people come to our classes and say that they really thought that calling a sprinkler repair person was very, very expensive. And so what could they do themselves to make their irrigation system more efficient? Now, the other reason we started irrigation classes for the public, I mean, we teach professionals too, but for the public, is because one of the #1 complaints is overwatering. And overwatering causes your plants not to do well because water displaces the air in your soil. And so when the plants don't have, the roots don't have air, the microorganisms don't have air, of course, they start dying off. And particularly in lawn areas where we have heavy, heavy clay soil, we get a lot of lawn problems, lawn disease problems. The other thing is poor design and installation, poor irrigation scheduling, no routine maintenance, runoff. That means when you're irrigating at a faster rate than the soil can absorb it, but also that your runtime is so long that maybe you've gotten a significant amount of water into the root system of your plants, but it's running off because you're running it too long. So we're going to talk about runtime and how long to run it and how to figure that out. And then changing your landscape design without changing your irrigation system. So somewhere, you know, maybe depending on the age of your sprinkler system, your irrigation system, you might have the design that the irrigator had to take to your city in order to have a permit put for them, in order for them to go to your landscape and put in what is on this drawing. Because the city looks at this drawing that the irrigator made and sees all the equipment that they're going to put in there, and then they can look at this and say, yeah, this is great, or no, not quite, you know. Maybe they might want to recommend something they don't see in the drawing. And so you might have this drawing, or your city might have digitized this drawing. Like I said, again, it depends on how old your sprinkler system is. I mean, I've seen some that are 30 years ago is when we started putting sprinkler systems on, and believe it or not, some people still have those sprinkler systems from 30 years ago, and they're not going to have this type of drawing. You can see all these blue circles. You know, you see half circles, quarter circles, full circles. You see all these circles. These circles represent the amount of water in terms of the pattern the water is going out, in the distance of water is being thrown by your nozzle on your sprinkler head. And the reason why I think this is so important for you to understand, back in 2009, the irrigation rules changed. It used to be that they wanted a design where one head overlapped with a second head, and you know, they thought that was pretty good. Well, what happens with the age of the nozzle, as our calcium water goes through there, it acts like sandpaper, and it makes that hole a little bit bigger. And so it's not maybe throwing as far as it should be. And then we're going to talk also about maybe it's not throwing the pattern like it used to because it's sort of clogged up. We're going to talk about all those type of things. But now the design is asking the irrigators to do it. Here's a circle and here a circle, and they overlap head to head, head to head. And so you're almost getting two heads covering the same area. So I think this is sort of important for you to understand that sometimes you see the problem where there's grass growing really, really well by this sprinkler head, and then really, really well by that sprinkler head, but not between those sprinkler heads. And that's because the distribution is not even. It's not overlapping enough to keep that. We call it a hot spot. And particularly if the sun comes through and hits that hot spot, it makes it even worse. And so, of course, that's the main thing we're trying to do is talk about irrigation in the summertime. We rarely have to irrigate in the wintertime unless a freeze is expected. You never want your landscape to go into freeze dry, particularly if you have St. Augustine grass, because St. Augustine, we're right at the area where St. Augustine grass is marginal. Up north from here, no St. Augustine, too cold. You know, below here, great. It's a tropical grass, it grows great, but we're at that edge where it's gonna live most winters, in fact, stay green most winters, but some winters are gonna hit it. I'm afraid this is one of them. But we just want you to understand the strain, and if you still have it, I want you to get it out and look at it and see if you can understand it. And so let's look at the other components of an irrigation system, starting with the one at your curb. Where's your water meter? Of course, now we have a shut off also, so we can shut our water off if we have to work in the lines that go into our house. But what I want you to see is this junction right here. This line from your water meter goes on into your house and provides you with the water that you want, running your dishwasher, bathing, cleaning, anything you want. What goes through that meter, you're billed for, and that goes into your house. And then this is what we call a T. And this T off of this main line that goes into your house goes to your irrigation system. Now, I'm going to show you two things on here that you need to know about. This is what's called a backflow prevention device. And this backflow prevention device, what this does is it keeps water from your irrigation system backflowing into your house or into the city water. Now, how important is this to you? Your irrigation water sits in these pipes and might not be the cleanest ever, you know, as it sits there, and the chlorine's not any good anymore. And so if it backflows into your house or into the city system, there's a chance of cross-contamination, and we don't want any contamination. So that's why this backflow prevention device is all about. And then this right here is another thing that is required on new sprinkler systems in some cities. This is what's called a master valve. The advantage of this master valve, it is on your, you'll see a MV on your sprinkler system where these wires go. And so when your schedule comes on, it says it's time to run, this will turn on first and it'll stay open throughout your irrigation session. And then it will close. The advantage of that is if we don't have this master valve, all of the lines, the lateral lines and the main lines that go into your irrigation system will always have water in them under pressure, always coming through here. And if the main line ever breaks, you're going to lose hundreds of gallons a minute because of that. If the lateral line breaks, you have a valve right here off the main line that opens and closes according to what you programmed it to do to go to your sprinkler heads in each of your zones or stations. And so those close. And so you're not going to get water leaking out if you break one of those unless you turn the system on or your controller turns the system on. And this happens a lot. You know, someone kicks one of these or hits it with a lawnmower and they're spewing out water. But unfortunately, all our cities have asked us to water at night, sort of. They say we can water from on our days to water. My city allows 2 days. I think Arlington allows 2 days too. Is that correct? Can someone correct me? 2 days a week. And so we can water from midnight to 10 o'clock in the morning. And then that evening, we can water from 6 o'clock to midnight again. So we have lots of time to irrigate. What they don't want in the heat of the summer is people irrigating in the heat of the day because of all the water lost to evaporation. And we're going to talk about that and pressure that goes through here and is a pressure right for what you want. So we have to understand a valve opens and closes by the signal it gets from your controller. When this valve opens on your lateral line, that runs your zone for you. Backflow prevents water from going into your house or back into the city line. And then a master valve closes when all the stations are finished running. Really, really important. Now, the other thing I'm going to talk about is this device that just came up here. This is what's called a pressure regulator. So we need a certain amount of pressure for our irrigation heads to put out the right amount of water that we have designed the system for, but we don't want it overpressure. Because of it overpressure, you get a mist instead of a sprinkle. You don't want a mist because it blows away with the wind and evaporates. You lose a lot of water. And I'll show you some pictures to show you what I'm talking about. So I just want you to understand all the components that go into this. This is a backflow prevention device, and your city requires it on new systems. I'm not sure they're making it retroactive on older systems. I know that it's required for all commercial systems. This is one being installed. This is at the community garden at University of Texas at Arlington. And these, they go above ground. Used to be the state of Texas allowed these to be in the ground in one of those big green boxes. But, they've decided that the manufacturer really recommends they be above ground. So this is required to be above ground with a certain amount of space below here. And so they have these covers that you can put on them, and they actually have insulation. For up north, they use an insulation within this rock-looking box, for the backflow prevention device. Then your irrigation valve. I want you to understand how it works. This is connected to your controller, and so when it gets a signal from your controller, this plunger rises up, and the water that's in your main line goes through to all your sprinkler heads in that area. In other words, you have one of these irrigation valves in every zone that you have, and it's going to be anywhere from 3 to 6 to maybe even 12 inches off that main line. It's very, very, very close to that main line, so they're easy to find if you lost them. They're usually in a 6-inch box with either a green or black cover on them. They really, rarely have problems, but they can. And so the wires that go between the solenoid, which is what gets the device, you can see a finger come in here and manually turn it on too. But this can be hooked to your controller, and you can set what time it goes on, and you can set how long it runs. Very important for you to understand how to do that and how to figure that out. Now, the sprinkler itself, the irrigation head. This is what we call the sprinkler, and it has lots of bells and whistles on it that you may not be aware of. The one thing that I want to wait a minute. Let me explain to you why I was talking about that irrigation valve being in the 6-inch box with the black or green lid. It's because a lot of people let the grass grow over it in the lawn area, or they cover it with mulch in the flower bed or shrub or ground cover area. It's good to know where these are. Not absolutely necessary, but it's good to know where these are. That's why I was bringing that point up. I carry a 6-foot piece of rebar with me if I'm looking for the main line and the irrigation valve boxes. So don't poke it hard. I just tap, 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 tap till I find it off that main line. Okay, so your sprinkler head. This is your housing. This is what screws in to what is called a riser. Can you all see this? Heather, am I holding it up good? This is your lateral line, and this is your riser, and then we have a 4-inch sprinkler head. This is going to pop up. This riser right here is going to pop up 4 inches. And the reason why we require those on all new systems, and you might want to switch to yours if you just have a 2-inch one, is because in this heat of the summer, this is particularly in the lawn area, we require that you let your grass be a little bit taller. And if this only pops up 2 inches, it might not distribute the water real good because of that. And so we need to understand why that. This only pops up when it gets a signal for the valve to open, and it'll all pop up, all of them in your zone, and put the water out. So this right here, this white piece right here, this is called a wiper. And the purpose of this is so when it pops back down, it's not going to take soil, grass clippings, pieces of leaves down into the housing with it. This right here is called a nozzle. And the reason I want you to know everything there is to know about nozzles is because this nozzle determines how far the water is thrown, and it also determines the pattern the water is thrown. So I'll show you a pattern picture so you understand that better. This is going to be a full circle, a 3/4 circle, a half circle, a quarter circle, or in the narrow areas next to your house and driveway, or out by the street where you have a sidewalk and a parkway. We want those kind that put the water out side to side. We don't want them throwing it out into the street or out back onto your sidewalk. So we'll talk about all those different patterns. So if our system isn't working well, one of the things you can do is you can do an irrigation checkup. You check it yourself. Love for you to have Tarrant Regional Water District send an irrigation evaluation irrigator out there also, and turn your system on, help you do your schedule to find out everything that you could improve the efficiency of your system. It's your water bill, of course, but we want you to understand that part of landscape water conservation issue is having water in the future without having to spend millions of dollars finding new water resources. So we've got plenty. We got plenty for the near future. As fast as this area is growing, there's still plenty here, but we have to think about the future growth and development and all the wonderful people that we want to move into this area. So we have our cap right here on our irrigation head. You want it to be, above the soil so you can see it, but you don't want it to be too high, because if it is, you might hit that with your string trimmer or your lawnmower, and therefore, or your foot, and therefore it might come a little bit loose. So if it's leaking right there, just take your hand and make sure it's down good. Down here, it can leak. After hitting that 750 times, the threading on the housing of the sprinkler could stretch the threading and you get a little bit of leaking. Unfortunately, if it's leaking way down here, this is 6 inches and this is 4 inches. If it's leaking down here, it's because this is threaded and this is slip, this is glued, and this is glued. But the vibration of constantly hitting it. And that's why we want you to understand that you need to have the cap, the soil level right here. You don't want it up here. You don't want it way down, because it's not going to do the right thing for you. And so you just don't want to hit that all the time. But that is something you need to look for. If you have a leak down here, you're going to see as that comes on, it's not going to throw the water as far as it should be throwing it. And it's going to be bubbly, from the sprinkler, from the soil coming up through there. And so that's how you can tell that. And so these are the common problems that we see. And we're going to go over each one of these and give you yourself an idea about how you can make it more efficient so you won't be losing so much water. So this chart gives you sort of a little buy-in about that. You can see we're talking about thousands of gallons of some of these problems that you have. And as far as efficiency goes, the same thing. Look at these. This is for a year, and so think in terms of that. Irrigation checkup. So the publication that she has fixed so that you can download is going to go over every single one of these. This is what you want to look for. And so when you start looking at this chart, you can do this yourself. But again, it's a free irrigation evaluation that you can get. Texas A&M, Texas AgriLife wants to call it, find it, flag it, and fix it. And as we go over the problems, you're going to see what I'm talking about. Okay, now this is your irrigation controller. And so if everybody in the class probably knows or will know or does know how to work their thermostat in their house. You know how to start your car. You know how to do this and you know how to do that. And believe me, this is the same thing. This is a valuable, valuable tool to you. And so if you don't have the owner's manual, when you open the door, there's some short instructions and a waterproof piece of illustration there. If you've lost all that, every single one of the irrigation manufacturers for all their equipment, not just their controllers, have a website with tutorials on it. They also have a 1-800 number. And so if you're not sure exactly how to run this thing, boy, that's an easy breezy thing to do with your home cordless phone or your mobile phone. You could go out there in front of this controller and say, okay, please help me. It's not right. I don't know what to do. And they'll walk you through it. They're very, very patient people. And besides that, if you don't call them, they don't get their jobs. So we all need to call them when we have ideas. I know at the church downtown Fort Worth one time, the guy asked me to come down there, the landscape manager asked me to come down there. And he said, well, it comes on at 2 o'clock and the city, sends us a notice. We can't run the irrigation at 2 o'clock. But I don't see that on this controller. Well, we're going to go over this because if we're going to go over this where it says start times right here. And what he didn't realize is there's multiple start times on that schedule. And someone must have programmed that long time ago when the city allowed you to irrigate any time of day you chose to. Now, I'm going to show you every bell and whistle on here except, well, I guess I can open this up and show you too because there's some things on the inside that you want to know about too. But the first thing you have to do is do your current day and time. In the city of Fort Worth, where I live, we're assigned 2 days a week to water. And we can water from midnight to 10 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening to midnight again. We can choose one of those times, but we have to do it on those days. So setting the day and time is very, very important. Another thing you have to realize is the newer controllers have what's called, EverLife battery in them. But some of the older ones, you need to check the battery on them just like you need to check the battery on your smoke alarm. Now, I will tell you right now, if the battery goes dead and you have to replace it, don't worry, it'll keep your scheduling in the little computer chip there. Okay, the next thing we have to look at is this, the start times. Now, the reason it says start times is because we have heavy, heavy, heavy clay soil, particularly in our lawn area. We might put mulch out under our shrubs. We might put mulch out in our ground cover beds. We put them in our flower beds and our vegetable gardens. We're always putting mulch there, and that mulch breaks down and becomes part of the soil. But the other thing that mulch does is it doesn't allow the soil to get hard and tight, because that's what happens in our lawn area with us walking on it, the kids playing on it, the dog walking on it. It becomes hard and tight. And because of that, the infiltration rate, the rate the soil can break that surface tension and get down into the soil, is more difficult. In the areas where you're continually mulching and it's breaking down into compost, becoming part of the soil, the infiltration rate is very, very, very quick. Now, I'm not saying it's all that way, but if you're mulching, once or twice a year, you're going to have a very, very fast infiltration rate into the soil. But we're going to talk about that. And so the start times is in the cases where I run my irrigation system for 2 or 3 minutes and all of a sudden they're 5, and all of a sudden all the water's not going into the soil, it's running off into the storm drain. What a waste. You're still paying for it, but you're not getting the advantage of it going in the soil and into the root area. And so this is what we want. And so in my landscape, I have 2 start times. I start one at 3 o'clock in the morning, and my second start time is at 6 o'clock in the morning. And this gives me the run time. I can set my run time by how I'm going to show you with my catch cans and stuff. I'm going to show you that. And then I can set the run times, and the irrigator controller will divide that into start times. So if I put 20 minutes, the first start time, it's going to run 10. Second start time, it's going to run for 10 minutes too. If I set it for 5 minutes, same thing, it's going to divide that in half. Rarely do we use 5 minutes, but if you have really, really tight soil, you might want increments of 5 minutes. So you have to look at your irrigation controller instructions, or call their 1-800 number, or look on the internet for their owner's manual to see which way your controller does that. The next thing we want to look at is these run times. And so this is what we have to talk about. How do we set this? Do we want 20 minutes? Do we want 15 minutes, 12 minutes, 10 minutes, 8 minutes? What do we want that run time to be? And so we've got to do what we call a catch can test. So one of the things you're going to get when you go pick up your stuff are these wonderful, wonderful, what I call catch can. I think there's 3 in a bag that has the instructions here about how to set that up. The main thing is do it. And as these fill up, you're standing there with your timer, and that timer, you can say, okay, it's half an inch. That's good for one run time. And how long did it take to get that half inch? Did it take 5 minutes, or did it take 15 minutes? A lot of that depends on what is called your precipitation rate. And that's what you're measuring here, inches per hour. But we're going to do minutes, of course. So how long does it take to put a ½ inch of water out if you're going to do 2 irrigations a week? How long does it take to put 1 inch out if you're going to do 1 irrigation a week? Now, I'm going to tell you right now, in your planted beds, like your ground covers, your flower beds, your shrub beds, your ground cover beds, where you put a lot of mulch, you've got a lot of good soil there, not the hard clay, except way down deep. You're not going to have to run it as long. This is mainly for your lawn area. That's where we see the most problems, is in that lawn area. So we're going to talk about this more, how to set this run time. Now, the other one is your water days. Are you allowed 1 day a week, or are you allowed 2 days a week? So this is very, very important that you find out what your city allows, and then you put that in there. The other thing this one has, not a lot of the older ones do not have that, but this is a seasonal adjustment. And so the seasonal adjustment can be on 100% during the summer, in the spring and the fall, when you don't need quite as much water. In the fall, everything stopped growing, slowing down, so you don't need as much water. In the springtime, we get some good rains, might not need to irrigate a lot. Then we can put this seasonal adjustment on 75, maybe 70 in spring and fall, and then maybe 10 or 20 in the winter time if we want to keep it on. Now, many of us just turn it to off, during the winter time, but we'll talk about that. If you're going to go on vacation, if it goes, 15 days in the winter time with no rainfall at all, you might want to irrigate a little bit, most certainly not the amount that you put out in the summertime, because the plants are dormant. They don't need as much water in the winter, barely any compared to what they need in the summertime. Then this is manual 1 station, and this is manual 2 station. Now, I'll tell you what the advantage here is. I can turn that dial to manual all stations and put it on run. Every station is going to run for 2 minutes. Now, what's the advantage of that? Lots. Because what I can do then is I can go around, here's zone 1, and I can look at every single sprinkler head, every single nozzle, and see that it's throwing the water like I want it to be thrown. It's throwing the pattern that I want it to be thrown. No leaking out of the cap, no bubbling up out of the risers. I can see that it's working fine. And if it's not, I can mark that sprinkler head, or I can carry a clipboard and paper with me and say, oh, in zone 1, this irrigation head we need to look at it. We need to check it out. And then here, manual 1 station, I can turn it to manual 1 station and then use my arrow keys and my up and down keys to run that station where I made some corrections to make sure that my corrections, particularly with the nozzle, is putting the water out in the right direction. We'll show you that in just a minute. And then, of course, we have system off. So that's what these are up here for, is these are for you to raise the numbers, lower the numbers, you know, increase, decrease the numbers, go to different stations, forward to the different stations. Then on the start times, this will happen automatically. You know, start time 1 will come up, and then if you need a second one, you push it again and start time 2 will come up. You can even do a third one. Over here's a program button, and that program gives you the capability of having different programs. And so A, B, and C. And in A, B, and C, you have 4 start times that you could do if you need to. Now that's in a huge, huge system. Most of us might have anywhere from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 zones or stations. It just depends on how large your system is. So this is the inside. And on the inside, you have a lot of bells and whistles. And every one of your controllers attaches to one of these in order for this computer chip up here to open and close your valves. You also have a restart button here. Now, sometimes the restart button's down here. And then these right here are your master valve button and your sensor button. The master valve button is that valve that's right after your backflow prevention device will turn everything off and not allow any more water through when your irrigation schedule's over. And then your sensor buttons are for a rain and freeze sensor and maybe even a soil moisture sensor. And so all kinds of things we can add there. So this is your program thing is in front of this that I was showing you a minute ago. You open the door and then this is behind there. Okay, so how much of your water bill is irrigation water? The reason I'm saying that is because my husband said, oh my gosh, we got a bill for, was it $120 or maybe something? And he going, we don't water that much. Why is our bill so high? And I looked at it, and the water bill and the wastewater bill are the 2 top lines. And I looked over here, very reasonable cost right there. And then I have my garbage pickup costs, my recycle pickup costs, I have my environmental costs, I have my storm water costs, and there might be other things on your bill. When I added up everything below the water bill and the wastewater bill and added up all those, that was more than 50% of my bill. And so when I explained all that to my husband, he said, oh, okay, well, that makes much, much better sense, because he didn't think we'd use that much water in the dead of the winter. Who uses that much water? But it just depends. It just depends. I have a greenhouse out here, and I use rainwater most of the time, but I'll tell you right now, I ran out of rainwater in the dead of the winter to water my greenhouse because it just had not rained in a long, long time. So how do you figure this out? Now, your water department puts a lot of information on their website for you. And I think you can put in a login, you know, identification and a password, and you can get to your bill that way and see a lot more data that might be not on your water bill. So this might be a simple thing for you to see on your city. Every city does it slightly different, but for your knowledge, this is how you could do it. You go to your water meter and open the big giant box there by the curve and read the meter before you turn on the irrigation system. Make sure no water's running in the house and it'll be more accurate. And then you can read the meter and run your irrigation system, your normal running, your normal cycle. And then you subtract go read the second number, and then subtract the first number from the second number, and that answer is in gallons used just for the irrigation system, if that's all the water that was being used. This gives you an idea more about the exact amount your water, and maybe gives you a little bit of incentive to check your irrigation system to see where it might be leaking or, you know, dripping water, all kinds of things, or even when it's on, wasting water by runoff or wasting water because it's misting and so much is evaporating. So this is what we want you to look at. But again, we invite you to invite one of the irrigation evaluation people out. They make an appointment with you so you are there. So as they go through and look at each of your sprinkler system zones or stations, you're with them and you can see that. So when we talk about runtime, we have to talk about the precipitation rate. Now, in all our mathematical formulas to figure out all this data, we use inches per hour. It doesn't matter what that to you so much is you just turn the system on, put all these catch cans out between the heads and measure it. You might do it in 2 or 3 spots. If you have one of these full and overflowing, and the other one over here barely has any water in it, guess what? You don't have good distribution. And so then therefore you have got to figure out, why you don't have good distribution. So we're going to look at some of the reasons why that is. Now, the other thing about this precipitation rate is I'm going to tell you right now, the average that we see is 0.6 gallons or inches an hour, 0.6 inches an hour. That sounds perfect, doesn't it? Because, you know, if we know that, then we can see that go into the soil. Or can we? Because we have to look at this infiltration rate, breaking the soil surface tension for the water to go into the soil. And then we have to look at this percolation rate. How deep does the water go? 4 to 6 inches into the soil is ideal. I'm still talking about a lawn area, because in your planted bed areas where you keep a mulch layer, you're not going to get this surface tension problem because the mulch doesn't let it form on the clay, because the mulch breaks down and becomes part of the soil. In my planted beds, I've been doing this for so many years, I'd have to dig down pretty deep to even find the clay. But in the lawn area, it's not that way at all because we don't mulch our lawn. And a lot of times the soil in the lawn area gets very, very compacted because of mowing and playing and all of that. So we have to look at this percolation rate. How deep does it go? So if I run my system for 5 minutes and it puts a 1/4 inch of water out and I really want it to be 1/2 inch or 1 inch, that gives me an idea about what type of run time I need, right? You can do the math. Okay, but if I put that then, if I want 1/2 inch and in 5 minutes it watered 1/4, so I want 1/2 inch, and so I run it for 10 minutes, but before it's finished that 10 minutes, it's running off of my lawn and into the storm drain. So I know, wait a minute, no, I can't have a run time of 10 minutes. And so that's when we start thinking about the cycle and soak, running 2 cycles, 2 start times instead of 1. We'll go over the directions for that much better in a minute. Then, how deep does it go? You have 2 choices here. After you've run your 1/2 inch, if you're doing it 2 times a week, or your 1 inch if you're doing it 1 time a week, then how deep does it go? One of the tools I use is a nice long screwdriver with a nice long shaft. And I can stick that in the soil, and you can literally, in a lawn area where you might have compacted soil, it slides down real easy where it's moist. But boy, once it hits that hard clay, then it's not going to go any further. And so we want it to go down about 4 to 6 inches. So we have to do this. You can also dig a hole. you know, to see how far it's gone down. If you do have such compacted soil, you're not getting a good infiltration percolation rate, then you might want to consider using or hiring someone to run an aerator across your lawn, and then putting about a 1/4 inch of compost on before the clay soil swells up and encloses those holes. Because clay soil, when it's wet, swells. And when it's dry, it shrinks and gets real tight. The holes, the pore spaces between the particles of clay soil, tiny. Easy to get compacted. So this is some scientific chart that you can see in almost any irrigation book. It's done by USDA. And this is the soil infiltration rate in inches per hour. Now, most of us are going to have a 0 to 4% slope if we have what we call a flat yard. Hopefully that 2 to 3 to 4 inch slope is away from our house. Sometimes it's not. But infiltration rate, 0.13 inches to 0.44 inches per hour. Now, if our irrigation system is putting water out at 0.6 inches an hour, what's going to happen? It's not matching up. And so pretty soon it's going to start ponding and going out into the storm drain instead of into the soil. And that's why we need to understand about the second start time. Because what the first start time will do is it'll break that surface tension and start the percolation rate into the soil. Okay, the second run time, what it will do, it will go more easily into the soil because the surface tension's already broken. And so the trails that the first irrigation cycle put into your soil does nothing but make the trail for the second irrigation cycle to go into your soil also. Now, what we have to know is this is inches per hour, 0.44. Now, if our irrigation system, you understand this, a precipitation rate, the precipitation rate is 0.6 inches per hour. Are y'all getting this math? So your catch can becomes very important in figuring all of this out. It's going to do two things for you. It's going to give you an idea about the run time, and then it's going to give you an idea about the even distribution of the soil. So here's a typical test that we're doing. We have a catch can near the head, you know, cross halfway to the other head and near that other head. And we're going to measure the water that comes out of here to figure out the precipitation rate. But this is the sidewalk. All new irrigation systems require that the sprinkler head not be right up next to any impervious surface, driveway, sidewalk, patio, but they be 4 to 6 inches away. So you don't get that wash back like a lot of sprinkler systems do. So this should be what? Should be a half circle, right? I see water coming here, and then way over here, but not over here and not right here. You see the pattern's broken. And that pattern being broken, it means I'm not going to get good distribution of the water. One side where that head, that nozzle should be putting water out is not getting water. This is the type of thing we're going to look for. And so I'm going to guess that that nozzle, see there's some soil and debris on it. I don't even see the cap down here. I'm going to guess that this is popping down real low. Soil is getting on it, maybe grass clippings, and then it's popping back up. But I bet that wiper's not keeping up with it. So I bet that this nozzle is full of trash, full of soil, blocking the proper distribution of the water. I put the tuna can out here. It could be a cat food can, 1 inch. You could mark it if you want, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch. And this is if you don't have enough other catch cans. And I've been using tuna cans forever. Of course, Tarrant Regional Water District is going to give you these wonderful ones with the measurements already on it for you. So aren't you lucky? Aren't you? What did I go backwards? Okay, so this is my sprinkler head here, you know, and so if I had 9 catch cans, either the ones that Tarrant Regional Water District gives us, your city of Arlington gives them out, I know, because I've taught classes there many a time where they pass them out, or you use Tuna can. So that's a typical pattern. And how deep does the water go? I use a toothpick. I wanted to say it's like sticking the toothpick in a cake. If it comes back up with your cake there, it's not done enough. So you want to cook it a little bit longer. And what the screwdriver will do is that exact same thing. It'll come up all damp and muddy and slick with your clay soil. And so that's the advantage. So you can see that was what, about 4 or 5 inches the clay was wet. Wow, that's really, really good. So I'm lucky. Sprinkler head too deep. I don't see the cap. The sprinkler nozzle, the riser's barely coming up above the grass. I'm not going to get a good distribution. It looks like a good distribution, doesn't it? But it's not, because it's not popping high enough up to get over that St. Augustine grass and throw the water the distance it's supposed to throw. And so this can be a problem. The sprinkler is too deep. Now, what I don't want you to think you have to do is dig all the way down here, you know, to this riser and get another riser, although you can. They're all kinds. The risers come in all different lengths. You can also get this type of riser where you can cut it off. But what I'd like to see you is not make too much work out of it. So what I'd like to see you do is just dig out the area right here. In a grass area, real easy to do, because you can take your sharpshooter and cut a donut around your sprinkler head and then lift that donut intact with your sharpshooter by undercutting the roots, and then lift that donut and set it aside, and then dig the rest of the soil out to get to down here. This is what I want you to look for at the irrigation part of Home Depot or Lowe's or any hardware store that sells irrigation parts, or some garden centers do also. And what this gives you the opportunity to do is unscrew this, and that's the reason why you want to dig that last bit of soil out. So when you do this, soil doesn't go down into your riser. And then I can put this on my riser. You just hand tighten these things. Don't use real strong tools. This is plastic to plastic. It works real well. And then, do I need it this tall or this tall? I can see how it's a cutaway. You can actually cut these off if you don't need that whole 3 inches. This doesn't count in the height because that's what's screwing on to your riser. So that's not giving you the extra height because it's screwing on like this. So do I need it 1 inch taller, 2 inches taller, or the whole 3 inches? This part cost about $1.50, $1.75. And how quick and easy is this, particularly in a lawn area where you can make those donuts in order to put the grass right back, put the donut right back. So please look for this type of thing, and you can do this yourself. Real easy. Please don't think this is hard in any way. If your sharpshooter's not sharp, get your file out and file down that thing and make it real sharp so that you can do that real easy. Poor distribution again. I guess this is supposed to be a quarter circle pattern. But look, we're missing here, lots coming out here, little here. Again, poor distribution. And so the main thing here is to take that nozzle off. And so here's Jimmy Bergdorf, works for the city of Fort Worth. He's demonstrating how he's going to pull that up. Now, I don't want to break any fingernails, and I'm sure you don't want to either. I carry either a big or little screwdriver with me, so I can ply that up, and I can put it right here by the wiper. Well, usually I can do this real easy. I can put it right here by the wiper and pull that up like this. I can take that off here. Like I said, it's all hand tightened, hand done. I can look at the filter and see if it's clogged up. I usually carry a bucket of water with me and wash it all out. And then I can put it right back down. Now, this is the thing I wanted to show you. I'm going to tighten it, hand tighten it. You know, you don't want to over tighten it with tools. But if I've lost, most of them have both the pattern on there and the number of feet it throws the water. But if it's lost that, if that's worn out, which it happens pretty fast, what I want to do is turn this back on to make sure when I tighten this down, it's facing the direction I want it to face. If it's not, I want you to understand you can use this riser. You don't need to unscrew this or unscrew anything else. You can put your hand around the riser and you can turn it. You hear it clicking? I can turn it in the direction it needs to go. And that way I'm not loosening anything else up. Now, please understand that's one of the reasons I like that where it says one station, you know, where I can turn it on and I can put the number station I want to run. So I can see that when I've corrected something like this, I've corrected it properly. So good thing to know. Misaligned head means just what I said. The head is not spraying the water in the right direction. Now there's a lot more wrong in this picture. I'm going to tell you right now. Number one, it's raining. Your irrigation system should not be going on when it's raining or when it's freezing. Number one, if it's raining, you don't want to lose that water because it's raining. Rain's providing you the water, and you can keep a rain gauge. Tarrant Regional Water District is going to give you a rain gauge like this, so you can go check that out and see how many inches of water you got so that you know. Also, Tarrant Regional Water District on their website or by email will tell you if you need to irrigate that week. Believe it or not, even in the summer, there's some weeks we don't need to irrigate because it has rained. And so we all want to make sure that we have a rain and freeze sensor. The freeze sensor's in here. This is a little cup that holds the rain. This is a wireless one with a battery, and it speaks to this, which is hooked to the sensor screws on your irrigation controller. And then you can program this, you know, what type of soil you have, all kinds of things in here, and what you're irrigating, lawn area, whatever. And this cup, if it has a certain amount of water in it, will override your sprinkler system going on. If it's freezing, it will override your sprinkler system going on. And so this is very important for us to have and make sure it works. You know, if it's not working anymore, maybe it needs replacing. Maybe the wires come loose. You know, something's wrong. So we need to find that out. Now, a situation like this is so bad because it's a bad design. Now, I'm going to tell you why it's a bad design. Because someone's going to run over. How many times are they going to run over it? How many times is this going to have to be repaired? Look at that. Look at this. You know, that's just not right. Look over here at this beautiful landscape over here. None of those have been run over. And so it's very important that we understand an irrigation design is a square design so everything overlaps, or a triangle. You know, and in this case, there shouldn't be a sprinkler head here. There should be a sprinkler head way over here, way down here, and way out here. And those three, that triangle, would cover this corner properly. It doesn't need to be where it can be constantly run over. Even if they wanted a sprinkler head on this corner, they don't need to be putting it where trucks are going to run over it. It needs to be up more into and make your square for you. Wait a minute, let me go right back to that. I'm going the wrong direction, aren't I? That's okay. And so let me show you, if we ever need to move an irrigation head, my driveway is very narrow, one car at the street, but it widens it to go into, you know, the two-car carport. And the curb that is getting the storm water to go out to the storm drain when it rains off of the driveway narrows down there towards the carport. And so my husband ran over the sprinkler head once, and that's okay. You know, I fixed it for him real quickly. And then he ran over it a second time, you know, and I studied a little bit more, and that's when I discovered that curb just runs out there. No wonder he was running into the garden area. And so I moved it. And so this is another tool that I think that you all need to know about. It's called a swing arm, and it comes in different lengths. And you could actually move your, I'm going to find it just a minute, it's sitting right here somewhere. And you could actually move your sprinkler head without doing a lot of moving of the PVC pipe. This is a 6-inch one here. And what I could do is not have to move all my PVC pipe. I could dig down to the bottom of the sprinkler head, and then I can put this here with a PVC attachment, adapter, and then move this over here, which is about, you know, far enough away from that curb that my husband's not gonna run over that. I could also use this equipment right here. It's called a funny pipe. And I could attach this here and then dig a little trench and put this here. So it takes a little bit of digging, but it's quick and easy, just a little trench to get this done. And I'm sure it's something, if you're having this problem either on the front curb or on your driveway, that you could do. Or the other place that happens is on your parkway. And I'm going to show you a picture of that in a minute. So let's see, am I going the right direction? Leaky head. Now you can see in this zone, see there's a head here popping up, there's a head here popping up, and it's letting water out, but not much. And the reason why is this head is leaking so badly. You can see the water running down the storm drain. You see this grass growing beautifully. This grass is not growing beautifully because it's not getting any water. It's a slope. And what we have there for is, I'm going to get back there. What we have is the pressure is so reduced. This is such low pressure because of the amount of water that's coming out of here. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? So it affects the pressure of the whole irrigation system, so you're not getting that water correct. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. This is a break. Now let me push it again and you'll hear it. Now the sprinkler head still popped up. This is in the parkway between the sidewalk and the road. This is the road. So do you see that the road is flooded from this water coming out of this break? And this is now a traffic hazard. If it was on a sidewalk, it would be a pedestrian hazard. It was in a parking lot, traffic and pedestrian hazard. What if it was freezing and it was like this? There's a school right around the corner, and those kids coming home from school are going to jump in that muddy water, have a good time, and their mama's going to be mad. But it also, for the kids riding in their bicycles home, it's a hazard. This is what it looked like after the sprinkler head turned off. Now, this is in the back corner away from the main. It ended up being a church sprinkler system. So I drove around till I found the church front door. No one there, no one answering the door. And I didn't see any cars in the parking lot, but I left my business card there and said, my Texas A&M extension business card there, and said, you have a broken pipe back there. About 4 days later, I got a call from the church manager, and he said, thank you, thank you, thank you. We had no idea that that was going on because we come in this from the other direction. This is where I was going down this turn right here to the elementary school because they were having a problem at their vegetable garden. And that's why I saw this. So I'm glad I saw this. Probably saved them thousands of gallons of water by telling them that. Head not vertical. Now, see, if the head's vertical this way, it's going to put water out this way. And look, this has been going on for so long. Look, it's had all this erosion. It's killed all the plants right here. This is not going to work right. And so this head needs to be put upright. At the same time you're putting that head upright, you might want to move it over from the sidewalk and patio or sidewalk and driveway, whichever this is, to get it a little bit further away. But the main thing, it's not going to work unless it's straight up and down, not going to work the right pattern. So I could use a swing arm there, maybe a little bit shorter than this one that comes in different lengths, or that funny pipe, I could use that. Now this is low pressure again. And so I was driving down Coit Road from our campus to go teach somewhere, and I saw this, and I immediately wanted to turn and give that a look and see. And so I parked in this parking lot over here, and I saw water running through the parking lot. And at first I didn't think anything of it. But then when I got over here and I took all my pictures and I saw these are called gator bags. They're wrapped around the trees, and they are filled up once a week. It holds about 40 gallons of water and slowly leaks out to water the tree area. So you can see someone's been doing that because the grass is green around there. But the grass is starting to not do good in other areas. And that's when I started looking around more, and I decided that water that was leaking and running through the parking lot had to be from the sprinkler system. So I went into this closest store right here to report it, and I thought they could call the landscape manager of the shopping center or the property manager and get someone out to look at this, because they're going to lose their grass, and you don't want to lose grass. You don't want to lose any living plant, because that's what holds your soil. So if all this grass dies, that nice berm that they put there, all that's going to erode into the parking lot and onto the sidewalk. So you want to keep that. So low pressure can be because of a leak. It might not be a huge break geysering up into the air where you see it real closely, but pressure is affected by leaks. Sunken head. Now I can tell you right now, that's been run over how many times mowing that lawn. Maybe even an edger is running over that. People are running over it. And so has it sunk? Because they can sink, because PVC pipe, believe it, for long runs is a little bit flexible. And so in wet soil, it can sink, or the soil can build up, particularly if you don't collect your grass clippings. Those grass clippings that you don't collect become part of the soil. They act as a mulch. And so we've got to understand, what would we do with that? What would we do with that? We'd get one of these things like I showed you earlier and raise that up the inch, 2 inch, 3 inches that needs to be raised up to have it right. So that this part of your sprinkler system this part is visible to you, but the soil's right about here on your cap. Of course, 10 years later, you might have to raise it again, but that's okay. Grass too high, or is the grass too high? Because I can tell you, does it look like a little volcano right here where this rotor is? You can see that wire there. That's a flag. Someone's flagged this, probably the mower, so he doesn't run over it because it's too high. The head is too high. And so probably this blew off of there because it wasn't tightened down good, and that's what created the crater that created the rotor being too high. And so we've got to understand, we've got to find this stuff. What we want to do here is fill in with some soil, compost, sand, something to get rid of that crater so the mower could go over it. Broken nozzle or broken head. The nozzles can blow off, because the threading's bad, because it's been hit too many times, water pressure, or the whole sprinkler head can blow off, not tightened down good, been turned too many times. And so what do you do with this? Well, there's the sprinkler head right there. So what I did is I picked it up and screwed it back down while the water was going through it, so a lot of soil wouldn't get in there. That wasn't my landscape. It was one of my neighbor's landscape, and I knew they would not mind me fixing it all. How wet did it get? My granddaughters kept screaming, "Gee, Mom, you're getting wet, you're getting wet." Like it mattered, So always be prepared. Wear the shoes and clothes that you don't mind getting wet when you do this. Again, nozzle broken or the whole head went. But what else is wrong? You see it's raining? That's not being caused by this break, it's being caused. Now, this is what I mean by too high a pressure. We want it to sprinkle. We want it to be like rain. We don't want this misting thing. This misting thing is a waste of water. The wind's going to blow that away and it's going to evaporate very, 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 very quickly. So we don't want that. Leaks now. In this case, the valve was not closing down good. Now, this is very rare that this happens, but every now and then, trash can get in here and it doesn't seep down on its O-ring real well. And so you get a constant leaky from your heads, usually the lowest heads. Now, if the valve closes when the solenoid doesn't get a signal from the controller, and one head leaky for a little bit, that doesn't matter so much. That's just getting rid of the pressure through the lowest head. But if you have every head leaky, like in this case, then it does matter. It does matter, and this needs to be looked at. Now, if you look right here, you can see that they have these real big screws. It's easy to take the box off of it. I hope you don't have to dig a lot of soil out, but sometimes you do. And then you can actually unscrew this and lift this whole section up, wipe it clean with a wet cloth. Wipe it clean. The O-ring is on the top part that you're lifting up. And so wipe that out real good, put it back down, screw it down good, run it again to see if it stopped the leak. And it probably will. This is rare, but I want you to know the difference between it leaking a little bit through your lowest head for a short time, as opposed to leaking from all your head for a great length of time, so much so that, look, it's got algae growing here. It's creating a pedestrian hazard on the sidewalk right here. And if you look real closely, the concrete, you know, that nice facing on it, that nice smooth, it's starting to break up. And of course, you most certainly don't want that. Now, I want to say leaky valve, but usually the valve leaks through the sprinkler heads. So what happens when I open up a irrigation box like this and I see water in it, I'm assuming that it's filled up with erosion, the clay in it, and it stopped it up. Usually when a box like this is put in, whatever equipment it is, whether it's a backflow prevention device or an irrigation valve, usually they dig the hole deeper than the box and fill it up with pea gravel or even larger than pea gravel. So it's like a sump. And so when it rains, that water is going to go away. Well, in this case, of course, it's not. And so that needs to be checked out to see what it is. High pressure again. I mean, this is just a crazy picture, because look, here they have a hose-in sprinkler over here on this side of the driveway. Do you see that hose-in sprinkler right there? So, I mean, I don't know what's wrong. I know it's too high a pressure on the irrigation side of the driveway, but I don't understand why they need a hose-in sprinkler on the other side of the driveway. Maybe they didn't run the pipes over there in order to have a sprinkler system over there. But too high a pressure. Does everybody understand what a waste set is due to evaporation and wind displacement? Now, you know, my granddaughter took those pictures. She was trying to capture the rainbow. And I said, wait a minute. You know, that's a perfect picture to talk about too high a pressure for a sprinkler system. And so, of course, she gave me the picture, or shared it with me. And we like rainbows, but we don't like wasting water. That wasted water is on your water bill. So you have to think, if you have too high a pressure, do you need a pressure regulator at the backflow prevention device? Usually, if every zone, every station in your sprinkler system is doing this type of thing, this pressure regulator needs to be right on the water going into your sprinkler system side of your, let me hold it this way. The tag's still in the way. So this needs to go here so that it regulates the pressure so you don't get this high pressure. I showed you that on one of the first slides. I had it fly into the drawing that I had. But you see what I'm saying? So this is something, a really, really, really good tool that you can use and only have to dig one hole. At the same time, either you can do that yourself or irrigator can do that for you. Now, one other thing I'm going to say about high pressure is in the future, we have, I thought I put one up here. We have, well, maybe I didn't put one up here to show you. We have what are called pressure regulated heads. Pressure regulated heads. And on rotors and impact sprinklers, we can not only have pressure regulator, but we can have a check valve in here. So if the nozzle does blow off, it has a plug that comes up and stops the water. And so a lot of park departments use that. So, you know, no telling when they'll find out they have a broken one. So the pressure regulated head. Now, for a regular head compared to a pressure regulated head, might be as little as 50 cents or $1. So if it's just one zone over, having too much pressure and misting, you could put this in with the valve, you know, with the valve, or you can have pressure regulated heads. You have to do them all in the whole zone if you're going to use the pressure regulated heads. So it depends on you. And I don't want to make it sound complicated by giving you 3 different choices there, but sometimes it's a whole system and it's better to put it by the backflow prevention device. If you don't have a backflow prevention device, it should go by that T that comes from the water that goes into your house. Now, I wanted to show this because a lot of people, you know, we talk about runoff, runoff, runoff. What is runoff? Runoff is when your irrigation water is going out into the storm drain. This is water you're paying for, so you don't want this to happen. The other thing I want you to understand is a lot of our cities now have water conservation plans. They have drought and water emergency plans, but they also have what are called water conservation plans. And the water conservation plans, you know, tells you if you can only water 1 or 2 days a week, if you're time limited about your time of day you can run it. But it also says no runoff with running water. Now you can see these heads have been put the 4 to 6 inches away from the curb. That is now good to prevent a lot of runoff. And you can see the storm drain is still wet. But the deal is, it's not running. It's not running. That's very, very important for you to understand. They don't want it running like a creek down the storm drain. You can also see this nozzle here and this nozzle here compared to this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Probably we need to look at these nozzles on here, maybe clean them out. They just don't look perfect like the others are good, but only you with the system on can tell that. And so when you turn this off after you do the 2-minute run time on your manual run every station, you can check that. And so what you're going to need is, you know, paper to write your notes on. You're going to need a little screwdriver to help pull the nozzle up to check it out, unscrew it. The other thing that I want to show you is this tool right here. Okay, now this little thing right here can make this open and close differently. But what the tool is for is, so if I use my screwdriver to pull this up, okay, I can take this tool then, and instead of me holding it with my other hand, because I might want to use 2 hands, I could put it right here and it's going to hold it up for me. So I can use 2 hands to unscrew this nozzle. And then I can look at the filter and I can look down in here and see if there's any mud in here, any leaf clippings, grass clippings. Wash this out in a bucket of water, you know, look down here. You can even turn it on to clean out the whole system. And then I'm going to put this back down in here like this. Oh, wait a minute. Let me show you one other part about this tool that's cool. Let me undo this. Oh, I lost it. How am I going to get it out of there to put my nozzle back on? Well, look at this part of the tool. You see how it sways, how it's out? And so I can actually stick this down in here and pull this back out like that. Is that not cool? You know, and so I can then put my nozzle back on. Okay, hand tighten, hand tighten, hand tighten. Okay, and then let that back down. That's how cool and easy this can be for you to check out these nozzles to see. Now, if you check them out and you can see this area here is not getting good covered. I can see it, but I can also put catch cans out there to tell you it's not happening. And then one of the things you have to understand, all these nozzles have a little hole in them to let the water go through in order to throw the water the distance you bought the nozzle for and the pattern you bought the nozzle for. And so if that's not happening, we have a lot of calcium in our water, and sometimes it acts like sandpaper, makes that hole larger. So let me give you the example of holding my thumb on my garden hose to make it spray, and also I'm pulling it to the end, and oh my gosh, there's something way over there I need to water. So I put my thumb on it harder, make more pressure, less water is going to come out, but the pressure is going to build up and it's going to spray that water out further. That's a good example. I'm sure we've all done things like that before. So sometimes these nozzles need replacing. Now, if you're in a position where you think your nozzle needs replacing, this is where homework comes in very, very important. Because if you go to the irrigation section of the hardware store or Home Depot or Lowe's or anywhere like that, what are you going to look for when you look at all those nozzles? So you've got to know how far you want the water to go head to head, how far is it between the heads, and you have to know what pattern. And so that all that information is going to be on the packet. So this says this is a full circle, and it even shows the pattern right here, and that it's 18 feet. So this is going to throw the water 18 feet, but we've got them to throw 3 feet. We have them to throw 6 feet, 12 feet, 10 feet, 9 feet. You know, whatever you need and whatever pattern you need it. All the information is on the packet. And if you've done your note taking really, really well, that creates that that creates that shopping list for you. If you haven't done your homework, you're going to get there and it's going to be a 2 or 3 trip to Home Depot. That's okay, but you know what I'm saying. Do your homework first. Now, creating a road hazard either with ice or water, you can see the wind is blowing all the water onto this side. This is still pretty dry. But we can't do this, whether it's our parkway like this or anything. Leaky cap, all I had to do was bend over and tighten that down. And what that did, it made the pressure correct. So all the heads were correct. Now, sometimes these caps will crack. The newer caps on the newer nozzles, on the newer heads, are made out of a tougher, particularly the pressure regulated heads like this one, they're made out of a harder plastic. So they don't crack as much, but they still can spin with the tires on your lawnmower. Poor design, poor maintenance, probably poor maintenance, but we don't know till we test it and see. Irrigation water hitting a fence or a building, there's all your calcium. That fence is not going to last long with all that water keeps hitting it like this. And so this again is we've got to see where the heads are popping up, and are they on this side of the sidewalk and throwing this half circle pattern, or are they on the other side of the fence throwing a half circle pattern? And what's happening over here? I can see the sidewalk looks really, really good. So whoever designed and installed it made sure it's not going on the sidewalk, but they didn't make sure. So this is where the head that goes from side to side would be perfect for. But if the heads are against the fence or against the sidewalk, you really need them in the middle for that to work real well. In the middle of the parkway, you know, the street's right over here, in the parkway or against this fence. And this again, I don't want you digging up all that pipe. This again is where I want you to use one of those swing arms. So you don't have to dig all that PVC pipe up. You want to use a swing arm to move your head from the edge of that sidewalk to the middle of it, and then change the nozzle so it's a sprinkle, it's going side to side in a long stream. And again, you can buy them that throw the water different lengths. This is something you can do. It just takes a very little ditch digging. I mean, you know, you can do it with a trowel usually, but use a sharpshooter and sharpen your sharpshooter. Okay, now there is on almost all our nozzles, can you see that? Can you see this one? Almost all our nozzles have this little screw, and you have the ability to turn that clockwise or counterclockwise. You tighten it down, turning it clockwise, that's going to build the pressure and it's going to throw it further. If you do it counterclockwise, did I write that wrong on the slide? But you all understand what I mean. It's clockwise, it tightens it and builds more pressure, and counterclockwise, it loosens it. Yeah, I did write that wrong on the slide. Okay, I'll fix that. Okay, this is a pressure regulated head. This happens to be by Hunter, but do you see this? Pressure regulated sprinkler, it says, instead of head. But that's the type of thing that eventually I think all irrigation things are going to use. Now, this is just one irrigation company's chart. Every irrigation company has a chart like this where it shows you this goes 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet, full circle, half circle, quarter circle, 3/4 circle, all the different options that you have for this. And see, this stands for full, this stands for half, this stands for quarter. I forget what this stands, oh, 3/4. And so they all have the notes on them, but eventually, after these have been used over and over again, the writing on here that's going to say all that sort of disappears. And so the best thing that you can do is run it and take notes about what type of nozzles you need, and do you need to increase the distance of the throw in order to get better overlapping. So new technology, this is what we call a multi-stream rotor. It's a nozzle, just like any other nozzle, except it's multi-stream. Okay, so here's one. It's a nozzle, but it's multi-stream. This is a half circle one. And what it does, it puts water out in heavier droplets, more horizontal instead of more upright and vertical. And so you can increase your efficiency by about 33%. This is mainly used in lawn areas, but I have seen people also put it in shrub beds and ground cover beds. This is just a wonderful wonder. Because it puts out heavier droplets, you don't lose as much to wind displacement and evaporation compared to this one up here. Now, if you want to try this, what you need to do, again, do your homework, you know, turn on your system, get a clipboard and a piece of paper, and go to every head and write it down. I need a half circle. Oh, here's another half circle. Oh, here's another half circle. Here's a full circle. You know, here's a quarter circle. You need to take all the notes in order that when you go, you're going to get the right replacements there. And so how easy is this? Okay, I'm going to pull my nozzle up, you know, and I'm going to get my multi-stream nozzle. Here it is. And I'm going to take this nozzle off. This is a half circle nozzle I'm taking off. And I'm going to put my half circle multi-stream nozzle on. How quick and easy is that? No hole digging. You're just replacing the nozzle. Now, of course, I'm going to have to turn it on to make sure that nozzle is facing the right direction and is the right pattern, even though I took copious notes. I still could be wrong. And so it's an easy, quick and easy thing to do. The longest part of that is going to Home Depot or Lowe's or the hardware store or irrigation supply place and buying the nozzles. That's the longest part of that, because there's no digging in order to increase your efficiency by about 35%. That's pretty cool to be able to do that. The other new technology that you may want to look at, of course, is drip irrigation. Drip irrigation has been around for quite a while, but a lot of people haven't gotten tuned into it. And we have whole separate classes on drip irrigation, but usually it's done with 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch tubing. The holes and the emitter is on the inside, like the nozzle, it's on the inside, and it lets the water out at a different rate. We have 0.5, 0.6 inches an hour, gallons an hour, up to 0.9, up to 1 gallon an hour. So it's a very, very possible that you might want to try this. Most people are using it in the parts of their landscape where they're putting ground covers and shrubbery, flower beds, vegetable garden, herb garden, rose gardens, places like that. But there is a trencher. It only needs to go 4 inches deep, so you don't use a ditch witcher. You use a trencher like this. And in fact, this one inserts a tubing in the trench as well, and then you put your pins in there to hold it down. I thought I had one right here to show you. These to hold it down inside the trench. It works real, real well. These eventually rust away, but once the soil's settled, that doesn't matter to you. So here it is, goes 4 inches down. There is subsurface irrigation tubing and there is surface irrigation tubing. And so this is the guy trenching in order to put it in. You start 6 inches from your sidewalk and your curb, and then 1 foot apart. And so you can see it's going in. This is about 1 week. This is in the summertime. This is 1 week after insulation, and this is about 90 days after insulation. This is Zoysia palisades, which is one of the zoysia grasses that Texas A&M and on Coit Road in Dallas, Texas is recommending for our area. The other new technology is what we call ET controllers. These are weather-based controllers where the weather station can be on your site, or the controller would have historic information in it in order for you to be able to have that work for you. ET means evapotranspiration. That's the evaporation of water from your soil and transpiration of water from your plants. The other one is a soil moisture sensor. This stands for evapotranspiration. Soil moisture sensor. I have one over here. And so this goes in your soil. It's battery powered, and it sticks into your soil, and it puts a little signal between these two nodes. And if the electronic signal measures moisture, then here it is. This goes onto your controller. This talks remotely to this that goes on your controller, on your sensor screw in your controller. And there's a little bit of programming, say lawn area, shrub area, vegetable garden, like that. And it helps you decide or override your sprinkler system if the water is being read, the moisture is being read between these probes. Now, one of the things I want you to know is that I had one person, she wasn't sure she wanted this because you know how it dries out at the top first. And the idea is to get your roots way down deep. So if it does dry out at the surface of the soil, it's not going to affect your grass badly because it's still wet down deep. And the longer you let it dry at the top, those roots are going to sink that water down deep. And that's where that test comes in. How deep did your water go? Because it needs to go deep in order to encourage deep roots, which will not dry out as fast as surface roots. Okay, so here's the other new technology, the pressure regulated sprinkler heads, the caps here. And so this is very important for you to understand that that regulates the pressure for you. But this is a pressure regulator that you could put into your system. It's an inline pressure regulator that can go at your backflow prevention device. Rotor heads are a little bit different. You know, there's a tool right here that if you don't have it in your toolbox or your irrigation box, you know, you can go by any irrigation supply place, and I think even Homes and Low Depot carry them. The whole idea is you can pull this up, and what you're looking at is this right here. Do you see this right here? This is actually the same thing as the nozzle that's on your other sprinkler heads that put out sprinkles. And these nozzles, if you look at these, some have really small openings and some have, see that small one, bigger. Oh, look how big that one is. Bigger, bigger, bigger. And so this is sort of like tightening or untightening that screw. It creates a pressure for the throw. And so some of these will actually say on the tree, this little one right here is 25, this is 35, this is 45, this is 50. And so when you purchase these, you know, you can purchase with one already in your rotor, or you can buy these and adjust it yourself for what you want. Rotors work at a different rate than sprinkler heads. They're a little bit slower, and so you're going to run those a little bit longer because they're made to cover a huge area. And so that's why your run time will be a little bit different for these. And so you can see that no matter what your pattern that you're going to fix that at, pressure needs to be 30 PSIs, and that's with almost all sprinklers. And then this is your gallons per minute, gallons per minute. And so you have to understand that your rate, your run time is going to be different. In order to adjust these, and believe me, if you go to the website of whatever rotor you have, they're going to have someone on there to show you how to do this. You can buy a 180 half circle one, or you can buy a 360 one. They come in all different patterns, but you can adjust that pattern for your site. Now, I don't know if you can hear that clicking. Can you hear that clicking? And so this is to my stop. And so if I wanted a quarter circle now, I can turn that to a quarter circle. If I wanted a half circle, I can turn it. If I wanted 360, I can turn it to the next stop. And then it would be 360, circle, full circle. And so different things we can do with these rotors. But the main thing for you to understand is they put water out at a slower rate because they cover such a large area. They can get stopped up too, but that's not as rare as the other. So we talked about figuring out our runtime and maybe using what is called a cycle and soak irrigation schedule. And this is where clay soil is involved, or a slope, or a slope, I should say. And once you've determined how long to run each zone by using your catch cans, testing how deep it went, then that's when you have to decide in those areas, do you want 2, 3, or even 4 if it's on a slope, short cycles. Now, most of them, if we change our, have 2 or 3 start time, even 4 start times, it will divide your runtime with you. But each controller is slightly different. So be sure to check your owner's manual, check the website for that controller, or even call the 1-800 number to get them to help you with that. And then wait 1 hour between cycles. So I told you I have 2 cycles. I only have 4 irrigation, zones. And so when I run the 2 lawn areas I have the runtime for 20 minutes, and then all the others are 10 minutes. And so when the first runtime comes up, it runs those zones, instead of for 20 minutes, it runs it for 10. And then the others for 5. And so then what happens is when those 4 run, then it waits. That's at 3 o'clock. And so at 6 o'clock, it comes on again. And so what has been allowed to happen between those run times is the soil's allowed the water, it's allowed to percolate down deeper and deeper and deeper. So when you run it the second time, those pore spaces between your soil are good to go and let your water in more efficiently. Remember, clay soil swells up when it gets wet. And then as the water percolates down, down, down deeper, then that swelling sort of goes away and the second cycle can go in the soil a little bit better. TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, regulates our irrigation rules and our enforcement. They usually turn that enforcement over to your cities or your county government. But if you have any questions about if an irrigator is licensed, you can most certainly call them, or you can visit their website and get that information. The best source for all this information, of course, is your water utilities website, Save Tarrant Water, waterisawesome.com. All of these websites are great for you to know and get the information you need about irrigation, that you need to line up a sprinkler evaluation irrigator to come by and check your irrigation system and help you with your schedule for you. Texas Smartscape is a program I helped write back in 1999. And I want you to know there are people keeping that up about what water conserving plants you can use in your landscape with pictures, height, width, all kinds of information, bloom time, color, all of that. Aggie Horticulture also has a wonderful website called Earthkind Landscaping that gives a lot of that same information. And of course, you're in Tarrant County. We have a Tarrant County Master Gardener office in downtown Fort Worth, and you can call them at 817-884-1944. They answer the phone Monday through Friday, 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock, or you can also go visit the office. They have all kinds of information they can share with you. So please check out these websites to see if you have any information. This is Save Tarrant Water. This weekly watering advice is really, really good because you would be surprised how many times it says no water necessary. And that's usually in the winter, in the spring, in the fall. Are you getting that? Winter, spring, and fall. Summertime, usually you're going to water at least once a week. Not always, but most of the time. July and August are our least one. The free irrigation evaluation or checkup, and then Green Pros. This is a course that Texas A&M Extension and excuse me, and Tarrant Regional Water District spot to give the irrigators and landscapers information over and beyond what they needed to get their license. All about water conservation and watching for the sprinklers to do a better job. Yeah, okay, so that's about it. Now, Heather, do we have a lot of questions? Do we want to answer them now? Or?
Yeah, we've got a few questions. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Dottie. Let's see. Let me change back over to me so I can show some information.
Okay. I appreciate everyone that signed in. I appreciate your time and willingness to learn how to save water, save money.
Absolutely.
Save water,
Yes.
save money, right?
That's right. All right. So yeah, like she said, thank you everyone for tuning in. Some of the main questions that I got, first of all, let me just address them about the free sprinkler test kit. Check your email after this and you'll be able to get some information on that. That's for Arlington residents, and that'll be at the downtown library. But like I said, check your email afterwards. And then also, a lot of people were asking about that free sprinkler checkup that we were talking about. So just go to savetarrantwater.com and you can go just click on the thing that says free sprinkler evaluation, and then you'll enter your information and everything, and then they'll call you and they will give you an appointment to get your free sprinkler evaluation.
You want to be there when they come because it's an education in itself. Yeah.
That's right. It's an educational thing. So you have to be there when they come and they'll walk you through your whole system, and anything that you want to know, they will answer. All right. So let's go to one of our questions here, Dottie. Okay. So one of the questions that we get a lot is, what is that tool called that you use? But I think you said before that it doesn't really have a name necessarily, does it?
Oh,
That's my
no,
question.
no, all our school gardens have names, and,
No, the
you know,
sprinkler, the little tool that you had, that little that
oh,
thing. Yeah, that.
um, irrigation pliers,
Looks like
although
a
they're not
sprinkler.
pliers, they only, I mean, you push them to open them, not
Yeah.
close them, but you adjust the screw to snap on there good and tight so it holds it for you. Because if this is too loose, it'll pop right back down. So these are usually found, I think they're made by Rainbird, and at the Home Depot near my office at Texas A&M, it's right, they're in little Ziploc bags right by where you buy the irrigation nozzle. It's like in a hanger thing there, goes up and down along the shelf. And that's where I found mine. Now, the little irrigation, things like this, almost any irrigation supply place has this. The advantage of this one is, do you see this crossbar here? So when you're having to pull up your rotor, you know, to check your, and you don't have that little tool, see, that's what this is for. So I can check that my nozzle's in there. Do you see that? And it's the correct nozzle. That's what this is for, this little, I mean, you can use it as a screwdriver, but if you insert it right here, and then turn it 90 degrees, that gives you the capability of pulling this up.
All right. All right. And so all of those little tools should be able to find just in the regular sprinkler section. Okay. You talked about the copy of the sprinkler system design, you know, for people's houses and like the permit that would have been
Yeah.
issued. How could someone go about finding that if they don't have that? Does the city have it on file
Yes.
potentially, or?
Yes. Any irrigation system that was put in by a permit, by a licensed irrigator, the city has a copy of it. Now, back when we didn't have big scanners to scan those things, they were done in rolled up paper. In fact, I could show you a few in the cabinet over here that we drew these big giant designs on big giant paper, but that's not done that much anymore. Now most of it's done on computer, and so they either email it to them, and the city has it on in their computer system. And so it just depends on how old your sprinkler system is. Now, I know the irrigators themselves, as part of their licensing, is they have to keep that in their file for a certain number of years, you know, and so you could, if your sprinkler system is less than 10 years old, you could probably find out who the irrigator was that drew the design and installed the design. Now, maybe that's not possible, but maybe it is possible, but definitely you could check with the permitting office of your city.
Okay. All right. And then someone has a question about, okay, if you have two different areas irrigated from the same station, can you reduce the amount of water for one area? I guess if they're on the same zone, though, is there a way to do that?
Sort of, you could do that by changing out the nozzles, but that's not necessarily advisable, but that's the first thing I would check. I put my catch cans out and see. What I see happen is, you know, when my son was playing baseball, we had a catcher's man and a pitcher's man in the front yard, and it was all grass. Okay, when he finished, got old enough that he could ride his bicycle down to the ballpark or up to the school, to their ball field, we didn't need a catcher's man and pitcher's man anymore. So, of course, my garden area came out about 10 feet. And so all that was ground cover and shrubbery and perennials, and, you know, it wasn't grass anymore. And so what did I need to do then? I needed to change the irrigation system to match what I needed to that. And so that's the main thing about irrigation design, is you're trying to provide the correct amount of water for that lawn area, for that shrub area, for that ground cover area. And the watering is different for those areas, you know, because of the mulch you're using, because of the clay soil that gets compacted, all those type of things. And so if that's the case where you changed your landscape, you can ask an irrigator to come in and put another valve in. One thing cool about irrigation supply companies, no matter what supply we're talking about, they want water conservation too. They're mandated by EPA to be all about water conservation. So there's now a little irrigation controller. It's called a node, and it could go to one valve or it can go to two. You could do it with two. And it's a little thing about 4 inches in diameter. It's run on a battery, and you can dig a hole and put a valve in where you need a valve in order to separate a zone or add a zone without having to trench all the way those wires all the way back to where your controller is. It's the controller itself. Node, N-O-D-E. It's called a node. And it comes with the little controller, the little node, and a solenoid. A solenoid is the electronic part of a valve. This is a solenoid. Okay, instead of having wires, you know, to go all the way back to your controller, it's going to work right there with that little tiny controller. And of course, you have to buy a valve to go with it. And it could be that easy, might not be that easy, but it's most certainly worth asking about if that. Now, as far as changing out the nozzles, you know, these nozzles will put out this amount of water and these nozzles will put out that amount of water. That's a little bit more difficult, but it's just a mathematical thing that you have to figure out.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, so it is possible, but there just might be
It's
some
possible, but it's better
on...
to add another zone.
Okay.
And it's easy with this little controller called a node I'm talking about. N-O-D-E, node.
Okay, a node. All right, and then I think we've got one more question. So some people are asking about digging up your, you know, around your head. Do you just use a sharpshooter to do that?
Mhm.
Okay.
A sharpshooter is a narrow shovel that comes not to a point like this, but a point like this, like a spoon maybe, you know, and it's only a sharpshooter if you keep it sharp. And what I use is I have, this file is what I use to do my pruning shears. And you can see I have a rough surface. There's 3 different surfaces. This is a little triangle. But this, do you see this file? It's very, very coarse on this side, very, very fine on this side. So I can take my shovel and with 3 or 4 swipes, it's sharp, you know. And so that's the main thing. I find that people don't understand they need to sharpen their shovels. The other thing is dry soil is very, very, very difficult to dig in. Wet soil is very dirty, nasty, and heavy. And so if you're going to dig either a trench to move your head or put a swing arm on or dig the donut to check things, water before and then wait about 24 hours so it won't be soaking wet, but it'll be moist enough that sharpshooter will make that donut real easy around your head.
Okay.
Now, of course, that's mainly in your lawn area. You cut that donut out. In your shrub area, ground cover area, you can do that too. But mainly it's mulch you're digging in there. It's very easy to dig in those areas.
Right.
Unless you have to cut shrub roots.
Right, yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Dottie, for joining us. And also thank you to everybody out there for joining us. And again, you'll get an email with more information about how to get your free sprinkler test kit and some follow-up information as well. So thank you everyone for joining us and have a great night.
Yeah, thank you for your time and attention. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Heather, for hosting this.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.